I'm Chris Farrell from the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast, a wacky weekend morning show, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out right now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and the opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other awesome geeky shows over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Thank you for listening to the Intellectual Podcast. I'm your host, David S. Dawson, and I welcome you to Season 8 of our show. The Intellectual Podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Please make sure to tap that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the show. We're also on social media, so give us a like on Instagram or a retweet on Twitter. We are at The Intellectual on both platforms. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just look for Intellectual Entertainment. And subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notifications of our video podcasts and other fun content at youtube.com/intellectual entertainment. We've also joined the fun on Clubhouse. Join us for continuing discussions with our guests and fun rooms talking about the entertainment industry and the latest hot topics in pop culture. Just join the Intellectual Chats Club on Clubhouse. We've even made it easy to find. Visit intellectualchats.club on any web browser to be taken to our club so you can join up. Now, let's get on with the podcast.
Talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. The Intellectual Podcast starts now.
Welcome to the Intellectual Podcast. I'm your host, David S. Dawson. As always, joining me is Whitney Wegman-Wood.
Hello, everyone.
And Steven Schwartz.
Hello.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
It's Oscar Sunday, right?
It is Oscar Sunday.
Yes.
I kind of forgot about it.
Right? The Oscars in the time of COVID seems not quite as important as normal.
Well,
apparently it's going to be live.
That'll be interesting.
It won't be a Zoom like last year.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I had it overnight last night, so yeah.
Whitney's barely awake. She literally just popped into her house from driving home from LA and jumped right into this call with our guest. Whitney, you want to introduce our guest?
Yes. So our guest today is MJ Lee. She is an actress, creative director, Korean Canadian, and now residing in the UK. How are you doing today, MJ?
I'm doing fantastic. It is a lovely evening here, my time.
That's right. It's Oscar Monday for you.
Yes, it is. But I'm going to wake up for it and I'm going to be really present for it. It's going to be a big one, I think.
Do you have any major predictions for the Oscars for us? We usually do an Oscar prediction pot. This will be the first year in 5 years that we haven't done an entire episode devoted to the Oscars. Do you have a prediction just to make up for the fact that we're not doing that episode this year?
I'm the worst. I haven't actually watched all of the nominees, which is so...
Nobody has!
It's so bad.
I know. I think I've watched one. I watched Nomadland.
Okay, that's what I watched too.
And my friend's in two of them, and I haven't watched either of the films he's in.
Oh, I did watch Mank. And I did watch People versus Billie Holiday.
Oh, so you watched Randy's films. Steve's the only good friend here.
Yeah, I actually had to watch I had to watch them a couple of times so I could see Randy, because if you blink, you miss him. But he is in the films.
Yeah, which is more than can be said for me. And
I did see Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So
that one as well.
That was here goes the senior moment. Black Panther.
Chadwick Boseman.
If Chadwick Boseman doesn't win for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, we're certainly in a whole different universe. Because that performance was epic. It was incredible.
What an absolute shame to lose that talent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially in the way that he was lost, the fact that nobody knew that he was even going through that. And he just was apparently just such a joy to work with.
Yeah.
But actually watching Ma Rainey is watching that performance. I just remember thinking to myself when it was finished, I was like, that was an incredible performance to go out on. You know what I mean? It was amazing. He's a really brilliant actor.
What's that movie about?
It's about a really famous singer who has a band, and she's quite quote unquote a diva, but because of the time period it is, she's kind of like making a stand, and just as a woman of color within that time frame, just trying to establish equality. Like, that's what I got from it anyway. But in that same breath, there just kind of becomes this friction between her and her band members, and obviously like the manager and things like that. It's all set within, I don't know, like the time that you're watching the film. So it's not set over days. It's like, it's in real time almost, which I really enjoyed as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know what you got from it, Stephen, but
it reads like the original stage play that it's based on. And you have all these different scenes where they cut back and forth between the band members and Ma Rainey and her dealing with her manager. And it's all surrounding the recording of this song, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And the controversy of it, because it was extremely racy for the time. I mean, by today's standards, it's nothing. It's tame compared to a lot of rap lyrics. And she wanted it recorded a certain way and wanted it played a certain way. And everybody wanted to tone it down. And the band members wanted to play it their way. And Ma just was this force that, and also Viola Davis is incredible in the role as well. So just it's like watching a masterclass in acting with every single performance of that cast.
That's cool. It's interesting. The people who make the biggest changes oftentimes are the people who seem to be the most stubborn and hard to work with at the time, right? Like when you're pushing up against that hard wall, sometimes you got to keep pushing, and it's uncomfortable for the people around you.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was the outright racism that she had to deal with. The fact that she was a Black woman who was pushing so-called pushing everybody around and making demands on white men who were the manager and the recording studio.
Mm-hmm.
And, having to deal with that, and then having to deal with the fact that, her sexuality was in question. So a lot of that was in play.
Sounds like it's worth watching just for the, observing the experience of a person of color in the industry, which
exactly.
I feel like this is a good place to segue to. MJ, can you go ahead and share with us about your journey as a person of color coming up in the entertainment industry, and how you began and how it's going?
Yeah, it's wow. It's really fascinating, actually, because obviously when you kind of grow up in a certain way and you don't know anything else, you don't realize that things should be different. So one question that I love to ask people, especially within the industry, are what are 3 characters? I'm actually going to set it. I'm going to ask the 3 of you, actually, who are 3 characters who really influenced you growing up?
Ooh.
Luke Skywalker, Indiana Jones, Marty McFly.
Oh, those are good ones.
That's a great ones.
Okay. I'm still thinking.
Gosh. This is tough when the tables are turned.
Yeah.
3 characters.
You guys should be guests on other people's podcasts more often.
I guess clearly. I've never really thought about characters who have influenced me. I guess growing up, like I watched a lot of, Oh, the like Fool's Gold and all that. I can't remember the little actress's name who was in that.
Kate Hudson?
Was it Kate Hudson?
Yes, it
In
was.
Fool's Gold, yeah.
Wait, not the one with Matthew McConaughey. The one where it was like the two little girls and they go out on like the last day of summer and they're trying to find this treasure. It's the same little girl who was in the movie where the little boy gets stung by the bees at the end and dies.
Oh, that was. You're talking about My Girl, then.
Yeah, My Girl.
Anna Klumsky.
Anna Klumsky, yeah. So she stands out as like someone that, as I was growing up, I saw a lot of her movies, and they're all like, she's like this little adventure kid. So I would say that one. And I don't know if I'm going to come up with two more.
That's okay. Steven, you got any?
Oh, that one that influenced me as far as, my friends here know me as a bit of a wise ass. And and my last position at Disney was a skipper on the Jungle Cruise.
Which is perfect for a wise ass.
Yeah, perfect for a wise ass. I would say that two people that that come off are Robin Williams, because the man could do comedy and drama,
yeah,
like no one else. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, it was Val Kilmer in Real Genius when he was young. I just identified with the attitude of that character. It's like never taking anything seriously when everybody around him was serious. I identified with that for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Excellent. Yeah. So I not to turn the tables on you, but I just did. So you're welcome. The three characters for me are, Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, because that character was kind of a standout character at a very specific moment in my time period in my life where feminine qualities could be seen as powerful, because up until that point, I think I viewed only masculine qualities as powerful. Only masculine qualities could command power or demand ambition. And so having such a hyperbolized version of feminine qualities and also be powerful was a new experience for me. And it's such a silly reference, but I still remember. And that character was the one that was like, after watching that, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to an Ivy League institution. I'm going to do that. So that's one. Another one is, sounds silly, but Batman, because A, I'm a huge comic book nerd, and B, because that character is a character that took trauma and didn't use it as an excuse to be an asshole. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I just did. Just like took trauma and used that as fuel to make the world a better place. And also it showed me that I don't need superpowers to be a hero. I don't need to be blessed with these extravagant gifts in order to try to make the world a better place.
Just a whole lot of money.
No, yes, 100%. I just need to be.
Yeah, the money helps.
And then the third character is Mulan, because she is, to this day, the only character who looked like me that was a lead. That really, really affected me and influenced me, and not in a submissive way, not in the stereotypical ways, and didn't need a man or a white person to save the day. But she did it herself. And so those are my three. And I think about that a lot, because I, even now, can't think of any character that looks like me that has that effect on me. obviously things are coming out now lately, like within the last 5 years or so. But it's kind of, I don't want to say it's too late, but in those developing years of my life, like that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it's kind of the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is I want not just people who look like me, not just like, Asian women to have something or someone to look up to, but like absolutely anybody. Like that's why I have such a huge soft spot in my heart for Marvel, because Stan Lee, that was his mission in life. Like X-Men was written, like those characters and situations were written, a lot through the civil rights movement. The reason why Professor X is named Professor X is he's named for Malcolm X, and he's literally a paraplegic, but yet the most powerful mutant in that world. So like think about a kid who is crippled, who is paraplegic, and he can look at a character like that and think that he can be powerful too. So to me, kind of my version of what art is and my version of what I want my craft to be is to empower and speak to people in a way that they realize that they can be the hero in their own lives, no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter what their gender is, no matter what their situation is. So yeah, that's huge for me. That was a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, I mean, it's a good answer. And it gets to a number of things that like Whitney and I've talked about the last few months. So when Hamilton came out last summer on Disney Plus, I sat and watched it with my nephews, and they all are just enamored by the show and love the show. But I remember it was probably the third time watching it with my then 10-year-old nephew. And we were watching Christopher Jackson doing one of his George Washington numbers. And like, I think the guy's amazing, and instantly identified with him as an actor and him as a character in that show. And, I just had a personal, like every time I saw him on screen, I got kind of excited and was like, oh, I can't wait to watch this piece with him. And while we were watching it, my 10-year-old nephew, he says, he looks like a young version of you, Uncle Bubba. And I kind of jolted back a little bit, and I was really taken by surprise because like I did get super excited every time he came on screen. From the first time I watched the movie, second he came on screen, I was like, oh man, he's kind of bigger framed. He's got similar looks to me, like certainly when I shave my head, like I look a lot like him. And it dawned on me, like he and I are the same age, but it dawned on me that, I was a theater major in college myself, but I majored in technical theater. I minored in acting because I couldn't see myself going full bore for acting because I couldn't see myself in anything. And to your question of us earlier, all three of the influences character-wise for me as a kid look nothing like me.
Yeah.
And as much as I love acting, as much as I love film and theater, I could never see myself in any sort of part on stage or on screen because I grew up not seeing people who look like me.
You don't realize it's even an option.
It didn't feel like it was an option. And suddenly I'm sitting here watching Christopher Jackson, who obviously didn't listen to that voice in his own head. So he's out there making it happen. Again, like I said, we're like the same age, but he's on screen, and my nephew is identifying with the fact that this guy looks like his uncle. And it meant the world to me that my nephews are growing up in a place in time where they're able to look at these people achieving great things who look like people they're related to.
And David, you said that you had a similar experience when Moana came out. And
oh yeah, when Moana came out, I cried watching that movie because the grandmother reminded me of my mom. Like hands down, just like my mom wore the moo-moos and the whole bit, spoke like her, and just, to see that represented on screen. And again, Lin-Manuel Miranda did the music in that movie too. And, the guy's just breaking down walls left and right for people of color. It means the world to see them playing parts. And that's Moana is culturally showing, island culture on screen, which is amazing. But then Hamilton is just saying, hey, we can tell our history too through our own lens. It doesn't have Hamilton doesn't have to be played by a white guy necessarily on stage. We're acting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you even just look at the history of film and think about an iconic character like the President of the United States, it's like, except for Deep Impact,
unless you're Morgan Freeman, you don't get to be a person of color playing the president on screen.
It's like
he's also God.
What about the gentleman from 24, though? He talked about in an interview how he felt like the fact that he got to be the president on 24 helped open up people's minds for
that was television.
I know what I'm saying. Like, there was an interview where he was talking about, he felt like because he had that representation, that helped people get to the place where they're like, oh yeah, Obama, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. Because this fictionalized character did a good job. But people had to see that first before they were like, oh, yeah, no, we can do that.
Yeah.
Well, representation matters because it opens the mind to the idea of something being okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that people kind of undermine the film industry, the film, TV, entertainment industry in general, because they're just like, oh, you're just playing, like this is just entertainment, it's not important or whatever. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that a lot of governments don't really value what we do in the same way. But what is misunderstood is that for a vast majority of the world population is that they're not going to expose themselves. They're not going to see different cultures except for through these mediums. Like I think the statistic is from 2017, but 98% of Muslims portrayed on screen were portrayed as terrorists. So if you live in a small town of 1,000 and it's primarily Caucasian, and the only Muslims you're ever seeing are terrorists because you're only seeing them on television, of course you're going to have this association. Of course that is going to happen. That's just how your brain is going to work. That's how psychologically you're going to make that association neurologically. Like that's just like it does matter very, very vastly, and it does drastically affect the way people perceive different cultures and different types of people.
Yeah, well, even if you tell somebody a lie over and over and over again, 20 times or whatever, it starts to feel like the truth.
Exactly.
That repetition of it just influences the mind over time. Our minds are pattern recognition. So when the pattern is over and over and over and over again, it starts to just register that as the normal course of being. Yeah,
oh my
it's
God,
is it Benjamin Franklin or is it Mark Twain who is quoted saying that a lie gets out of bed before the truth gets up and gets his boots on, or a lie travels around the world before the truth gets up out of bed. Something to of that nature. But
it's always interesting to me to get into the discussion of the responsibility of Hollywood with social justice, if you will, because that's what everybody's talking about on social media right now is this Hollywood's social justice worrying about everything all the time. And one of the things I try to remind myself of is, as much as I travel, as much as I know Whitney travels, and I've taken Steve to the Philippines, so he's traveled and he's been across the country himself. But there's a lot of people who don't have experiences outside of their own hometown. I'm constantly reminding myself of that when I'm interacting with people, because when I first left for college in Texas, so I went from California to Texas for college. When I got in, I went to Baylor, and when I got into Waco, I actually met a guy who was at the time the age I am now. He was in his mid 40s, who had never left McClellan County in the entirety of his life. He'd never left this like 10 square mile area of central Texas. Mm-hmm. Like he never even went up to Dallas to go watch the Cowboys play, because he said, I ain't got no need. It's on the TV. and his entire world experience was this tiny little spot in central Texas. And the only thing he knew about the outside world was what came to him on television or in the movies. And I try to remind myself of that constantly when we're making stuff and talking about stories to tell. And when I get into these debates about the responsibility Hollywood has to, tell broader stories and have greater representation, is as much as it is about MJ, you and me seeing ourselves on screen, somebody like that needs to see that there's other people in the world too, because their worldview is so limited.
Yeah, it's really fascinating and really frustrating, actually, because it, like, oh God, what did someone say to me? I don't know if you have it over on your side of the pond, but we have co-op agencies where like actors act as each other's agents, as kind of like as a collective, and that's kind of a thing that they do here. And so I have some actor friends who are part of that. And so in turn, they'll see the kind of breakdowns that are going out and all this stuff. And especially after kind of BLM kind of resurged last year, and with all the AAPI hate stuff that's been happening, like one of them was like, I was like, oh yeah, so it's, if you're a white man, then you're just going to get no work. It's no point if you're not name, dame, or bame. You might as well just not. And I was like, okay, okay. You just called me a ticked box.
What was the third one?
Name, dame, or bame. So if you're not a name, like a household name, or you're not a female, or you're not bame, then
what is bame? Like, I'm sorry.
Bame as in Black, Asian, mixed ethnicity. I think that's the acronym for it. Basically a person of color. I have some people who've actually like complained about the fact that they're like, as white men, they've got it the most difficult. And I was like, okay. It's I think people also forget how recently people of color were even on screen. And if you actually look at the statistics, because I make a point to read the Hollywood Report every year, and it's still like 74% Caucasian still. Even now, I mean, that number is getting better, but like even like Asians get, I think it's 1.6% of speaking roles in films.
It's still really small.
Which everyone sees kind of like something like, oh my God, Crazy Rich Asians. That means that like, oh, suddenly Asians are everywhere.
You got your one movie. You should be happy.
Yeah.
That makes up for the centuries of
Like you got your one movie. Can't you be quiet for another 20 years? Just go back to the corner. We gave you the breadcrumb. Bugger off. It's tough, and it gets into the whole topic of systemic racism and how do you change systemic situations. It doesn't happen overnight. You make a step forward, and then there's inevitably a step or two back before you get to take another couple steps forward. And it's just a long slog to try and get things to change, because we as human beings are very slow to actually change when it comes down to it.
there's a lot of excuses behind it. Like one of the classic excuses is like, oh, there just aren't as many actors of color, especially actors of color who are good, or like what this and whatever. And kind of going back to what you said, David, about like, if you don't see yourself in those roles, if you don't think that that's an option, then you're not going to go down that road. Mm-hmm. So the reason why there are fewer in the first place is because that door's not even open. Like we don't even think that door's open.
Yeah.
So it's the more developing people and younger people are seeing that, oh, maybe I can be an actor, then the more of them are actually going to enter the industry. And then the greater the pool will become, but that pool will never get there if they think that it's not even, if they think that down is up and up is down and, you know, becoming an actor is like falling upwards. Like, do you know what I mean?
So what do you feel like did that for you as a child? Because we discussed you didn't have a whole lot of people that you could look to as representation and people to look up to. So where did you find that in yourself where you're like, I'm going to pursue this path? Was there anybody like personally in your life that really encouraged you, or how did you get on the acting track?
Well, I didn't get into this until much later in my life. I actually started out as a competitive figure skater because I'm Canadian and I like to be a stereotype. Yeah, so I did that for a long time until an injury took me out. And then I went and got my degree in the States, in New Hampshire, but also like traveled around loads and got a degree in sociology and French literature. And I thought I was going to work in like big companies, like corporate companies, even like in creative design and coordination. But it somehow just kind of didn't feel right. And then on a whim, I went to an audition for the Vancouver Scholarship Dance Program. Just for shits and gigs. I don't even know why I was there, but I just like went, and 4 hours of being looking batshit crazy, having like flailing limbs all over the place. At the end of it, the director handed me a contract and I cried. I saw the contract in my hands and I just bawled because I was like, oh my God, I'm meant to be a performer. And I just kind of never looked back. And from that, I kind of segued into acting. And it just, I think because I decided so late in my life after I tried so many other things that didn't ever feel quite right, that's how I know at this point, I'm like, no, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And this is exactly what I want to do. And I know this because I've already done all the other stuff. I already did the stuff that you're supposed to do as a sensible human being. Being a sensible human being, that's no fucking fun, you know? But also because of my degree, a lot of what I focused on within my studies was kind of the effects of media and the effects of group dynamics and the way women are portrayed in the workplace and like, and all of these things, like doing all that research into that. I felt quite passionately about, that's what I want to change. And I just, even though that's what I know I want to change, I wasn't sure what the vehicle was of me affecting that change. And now becoming an actor and a creative director, like I was like, oh no, this is just the vehicle to get to the top of the mountain, really. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I wouldn't say there's any one person who kind of put me onto this. Oh, I guess that that crazy director who mindlessly handed me a contract. I guess I have her to thank for this. But
so wait, when you got that, did you have a background in dance? Is that part of your training as a figure skater as well, or you just went in and you just have an innate like sense of your body?
So I did. So I went to Dartmouth, and at Dartmouth they have a requirement to do PE credits, and you know, like, obviously the most fun one was going to be dance. So like I did this like hip hop dance student group or whatever. And I always enjoyed dancing. And like, I was like, all right. Like we weren't like we were just kind of like practicing together as college kids. But yeah, we didn't have any like professional teachers or anything. And yeah, and I don't know. I'm really good at plunging into the abyss of everything I don't know, and just kind of like, you know, jumping out the plane, hoping that I have a parachute instead of just a standard knapsack, which is probably why acting kind of really, really suits me super well.
Yeah, just jump in and sink or swim, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
My least favorite class of my theater program was dance. I hated going to dance class.
Oh gosh, it's
mostly because they made me wear a tight black leotard and stand in front of a mirror for 2 hours, and I didn't like looking at myself in a black leotard.
Oh, I mean, who really looks good in a black leotard? Really? That's just
some of the people I was in class with did. Which made it even harder to see myself on the mirror next to them. So
I don't even like to see myself on camera. I mean,
oh gosh, I remember the first time I saw myself, a playback of me, like a close-up shot. And I was like, whoa, that's my face real big.
Yeah, nothing like seeing yourself on a big screen for like the first time. Whoa, my nostrils 12 feet tall.
Yes.
This is just a little bit much.
Every single time I see myself on camera on screen, it's like, wow, who put the fat old man filter on it?
Oh my God.
They say the camera puts on an extra 10 pounds. Well, how many cameras were on anyway?
Oh God. Yeah. Oh gosh. Friends, what an excellent reference. What an excellent show. Oh man. Yeah. It's one of my goals to do a fun sitcom and see. I don't know.
Cool.
Just see more diversity in that. Yeah, totally.
So is film more your medium than theater, or do you do both?
My great love is film, TV, is screen for sure. I mean, I do love theater, but theater is kind of like the fun fling I like to dabble with once in a while. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I learn loads. I learned so much. I've actually done quite a lot of immersive theater as well. Yeah, and I'm not going to lie to you. If you ever want to hone some improvising skills, just do an immersive contract. There's nothing like, there's nothing like it. But yeah, I would say film TV is kind of more what my love is. But because film TV is always like, it is such a sporadic thing. It is so like project to project kind of thing. Like if sometimes I'm like, MJ, you just need a little stability in your life. There's nothing like a theater contract where you're like, you're from like Wednesdays to Sundays. You'll have a thing, you'll have a paycheck at the end of every week for like a good substantial amount of time. But yeah, film TV, I think. And I think there's a bit more reach with it, in what I want to do, like especially with the why I do this, which is kind of speaking for underrepresented voices. I think film TV it better serves that goal, I think.
Yeah, it's a medium that allows you to connect with more people for sure. Yeah. So you did this dance thing, and that sort of got you on this path. How did you get into the film aspect?
I told you, Whitney's the one who's got all the structure, and then Steve and I just kind of flow along, right? Did I not explain this to you appropriately ahead of time?
You did indeed.
I'm a teacher. It comes with the territory.
Yeah, so I think as a dancer, you like one of the things that, especially as a commercial dancer, you do commercial, you put yourself up for commercials, like you go out for commercials. That's just kind of a standard. And what's really common for dancers to do is to take acting classes because it just makes you a better performer in general. And I think think as soon as I found acting, as soon as I started getting into it, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. This is taking everything I love about dance, stripping away all the stuff I don't like. And it's just delving even more into what I want to do. So the transition actually, it was when I met my current acting coach, actually, who I still see. Like over on this side of the pond, like doing the drama school thing is really, really kind of everyone's MO. Like you go to drama school for a few years and then you go out and you work. Whereas I feel like on, the North American side of the pond, you go to acting class and you keep going because you want to keep getting better. And it's just kind of a standard, I guess. And I have much more the North American mentality. So since I started with my acting coach, who's like this like crazy, like New Yorker living in London, but like looks like a cartoon character and acts like a cartoon character and just is like the most stereotypical acting coach you could ever meet in your entire life. Even now I still see him without fail every single week.
What is his pedagogy, out of curiosity? Like, does he adhere to a certain acting style?
He's kind of a mishmash of, I'd say he dabbles in a bit of Meisner. What he calls it instinctual acting. And he does take from aspects of Meisner and Uta Hagen and Stella Adler, and kind of has created his own kind of fusion between the three. And he just kind of is really good at pissing me off. And I know. Right. And it just like kind of, and just frustrating me to all hell. So that no matter what anybody says to me in the industry, it will never be even a fraction of it of as frustrating as my acting coach is. So that's why I adore him. But yeah, I think with the thing about dance is that commercial dance anyway, is that it's your kind of job to be as clean, as the same as everyone else, but never too individual that you're pulling focus from the artist. So when I knew I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. So I actually had the chance to dance with Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation, like freaking my big bucket list moment. I'm like, oh my God, the queen herself. I'm dancing Rhythm Nation of all things. I remember getting off stage and being like, was that it? Very honestly, I was like such an iconic song, such an iconic artist. And I just was like, oh, I just went on stage, made sure that I looked exactly the same as everyone else. I didn't pull any focus from the artist because or else I'm being bad at my job. And I was like, why am I trying so hard to be as background and as clone-like as possible?
Well, even never felt backup singers get more kind of feature time than backup dancers do. Backup dancers are just supposed to be motion in the background.
Yeah. If anyone actually notices you as a dancer, then that means that you are doing a bad job. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to be this sounds horrible, but you almost have to be as forgettable as possible. Yeah. Like that's what you're training to do. That's when you know you're really good at your job is if you didn't.
You're essentially like a crew member. Like if you did your job right, nobody knew you were there.
Yeah. And like to put your own flavor onto things and like stuff like that, like you can kind of do, but to a point. Whereas with acting, if you are like everyone else, that's when you're fucked. You know what I mean? If you are forgettable, then that's when you're fucked. Like when I found acting, I was like, it's when I could really become the most myself and really, be as authentic as I could humanly possibly be, because that's what it means, you know?
It's interesting. I've been spending a lot of time on Clubhouse, just listening to casting directors talk. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've heard repeatedly now is you get thousands of submissions, self-tapes, thousands of them right now for roles. And easily every one of them said basically the same thing. 95 to like 98% of every submission looks exactly the same in performance. The pause is at the exact same spot because that's where it was written in the script. The beats are all exactly the same tempo.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, it's that tiny little percentage to figure out how to deliver something in a unique way that stands out.
Yeah.
And like, they're like, we don't know what we got to do to explain this to actors, but you got to figure out how to make it your own.
Yeah.
Don't just deliver it exactly as you see it on the page. Find the way to make it uniquely you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd look like everybody else and you're not going to get noticed.
Yeah, I would say that the best acting advice I ever heard from an actor was from Spencer Tracy, who said, "Don't get caught doing it." It means so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're doing it, you're doing what's expected. If you're being you, you're going to bring unexpected things to it because you are a unique individual.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything
100%.
you do is unique to you that way.
God, yeah. It's one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned through this is that like, because people are like, oh, you're an actor, you must be a great liar. And I'm like, no, I'm fucking crap at lying. I'm the worst liar ever. What acting is, it's not lying. It's like what acting is finding the truth in it.
Yeah.
Like that's what acting is. I'm not, and people have like different philosophies and stuff, but like what works for me is I'm not trying to make myself a character. I'm asking myself, how is this character me?
Yeah.
And it's such a subtle difference, but it's I found that through the craft and like kind of what helps me really get into it is it's as soon as you try to put yourself onto something else, then that's when it becomes disingenuous. For me anyway. When
I'm directing, a lot of the actors I work with, they want to talk about the situation within the scene. Like, well, this is what's going on with this character and I need to figure that out. And I said, no, what's the emotional throughput of what that character is going through? How can you truthfully relate to that emotional center? The words will be the words and the words will stem out from whatever emotional center you find, but you have to figure out what the emotional core is and then figure out how that relates to you in a truthful manner. And then you can bring that emotion into it and then the words will flow out correctly. But if you're just trying to like focus on the situational moment of the piece, like you're just going through the motions. You're pretending to do something,
Oh my God.
I'm
totally.
always trying to help actors find that emotional center so that they can then bring their own personal experience that isn't at all the same situation, but is relatable to them as a parallel emotionally, and then they can figure out where to go from there. That's what I usually try to do as a director to help an actor get through a scene that they're having a hard time with.
Yeah, I ask myself a lot as well when I'm watching scenes, not just of myself, but like, if someone who did not speak the language at all watches a scene and still knows what it's about, that's when like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Volume down.
Yeah.
Turn the volume down, and if the body's emoting, you're there.
Yeah. What's a crazy statistic is that up to 97% of communication is nonverbal.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Isn't that insane?
It's all
up to 97%.
That's why people don't like Zooms and they don't like phone calls for stuff. That's why there's so much miscommunication. Because even on a Zoom, I can see your face, but I'm not seeing the tension in the rest of your body. I'm not seeing where you're shifting your weight, and I'm not seeing necessarily what your hands are doing, unless you're like me and your hands are always up in your face. But it's like I'm looking at you, I see shoulders up, so I get a piece of that information, but not all of it.
Look at texting. How much is lost of context through texting?
Yeah, I mean,
think about how many people are
really hard because we don't see each other. We can't put context to that text. It's just the text. And
oh my God,
we all make assumptions onto what it means.
Oh my God,
I had this woman that I know constantly calling me and complaining about her boyfriend, she sent this long text to him, and it took him an hour to respond, and it was only just a couple of words compared to what she said. And I'm like, what do you expect? I mean, it's a text. I mean, it's like, why did he wait so long? And I said, he had explosive diarrhea. You don't know.
You don't know. Don't assume.
Yeah.
There's a great meme that went around a while back. It was a couple in bed, and the husband's like laying on his side with his back to his girl, and she's sitting there, and she's like, he hasn't said a word in an hour, and he just seems so distant. Like we must be falling apart. I don't know what I did wrong, but and it's the spiraling, out of control conversation in her head. And the next frame is a bubble above his head, and he's like, I think I need to change the oil on the motorcycle. Like communication is like key to everything, but it's so easy to spin out of control and not read everything correctly, and not hear everything correctly, and not interpret that communication correctly. It's fascinating how much, like you said, 97% is nonverbal, but the nonverbal also is the hardest to read correctly too.
Well, and consider this, David, like think about, so gesture is cultural, right? Like the same gesture can mean multiple things across cultures. However, they've done studies, and when it comes to facial expression, that's almost completely universal. Like a grimace is a grimace no matter where you are in the world. So that's fascinating. Like we've been hardwired to read that, the actual emotional expression in people's faces. So yeah, it's absolutely necessary and very helpful to see people whenever they're speaking. Sorry that you can't see me right now.
Well, as a cast member with Disney, we were given a quick overview of cultural etiquette in certain things that we can and cannot do. We cannot use our index finger to point. It can only be a 2-finger or a whole hand point. If you're giving someone direction on going this way, it has to be minimum 2 fingers or your entire hand.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Some cultures find pointing impolite.
Yeah, single finger pointed your direction.
Single finger pointing is extremely rude and impolite.
Rudely.
So you use 2 fingers or your open hand, your open palm.
Oh, it's so, you're right. Because that's one of the first things I ask before I travel anywhere. I'm like, what is going to piss people off when I go? Because I don't want to. Like, even when I moved over here, over to the UK, like, doing a peace sign, except like back, like the back your hand towards the other person. It actually means flipping them the bird. Whereas like to me, yeah, I know. And to me, I'm like, oh, it's just Usher circa 2000, peace out, A-Town down. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's what it is to me. But they're like, no, you're telling them to fuck off, or you're saying fuck you. And I was like, oh, so sorry.
Wait, are there any like gestures that Canadians find offensive that Americans do that it like doesn't translate? I'm just curious.
Pretty much existing, Whitney.
No, you know what? Actually, I've never found any gestures. I find that Canada and America are quite aligned in terms of like gestures and like even language and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like, again, it was coming over here. Like pants means something, like pants is just pants to us, but like pants here means like your underpants.
Your undies, yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember like within the first month of me moving, I was telling a story about, I was like, I don't know, I was saying something like, oh God, I really hate to wear pants. I just like wish I could live the rest of my life without pants. And when I was talking about
everywhere.
Yeah, I was like, what I meant was like, I would just want to wear shorts or leggings the rest of my life. I don't want to wear pants, but they just all thought that I was just like confessing to everyone that I never wear underwear. And they all were like, and obviously because they're like Brits, like, so it's like, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of a polite, a little bit more uptight culture. They're like, oh, that's lovely. Okay. And I'm like, why is everybody
They're also
so
too
weird?
polite to ask if there's a misinterpretation either, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Just like, oh, that's
oh my
very
word.
interesting. Oh my word. Yes. Oh, goodness. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, why is everybody so? It wasn't until way later that I found out that everyone in that conversation just thought I was like just really, really slutty for like the first few weeks of them meeting me. And I was like, wow, good first impression. Good.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's just too much. Yeah. But you know what? It would be worse if I had shame, but I just don't have that in my body.
Oh, you and Dave get along great.
Oh, great.
I think it's the
I
Asian
knew.
in us. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. When Dave took me to the Philippines, I was the whitest person in the country.
Oh, that was a heck of an experience for Steve.
Oh my God.
Because he stood out like a sore thumb everywhere we went. It was incredible. And really interesting for me to experience being alongside him. Like suddenly I looked normal and he didn't. You know, it was
complete
very, very
culture shock. And the fact that, apparently in Filipino culture, pale skin is a sign of power or a sign of wealth.
Is it?
And
the ladies in the Philippines are always
their
pale makeup trend.
They're all these, skin lighteners and such.
Because dark skin means you work in the fields.
Is that like a holdover from imperialism?
No, it's if you're dark skin means you work in the fields. You work out in the plantations and stuff, and
Korea's
the same. Sun a lot, and you get the darker.
I would have people staring at me. I'd have kids walking up to me and touching me.
Oh yeah,
that was strange. We were sitting at this one outdoor restaurant, and this one little girl was just staring. Sat right next to me and was just staring at me the entire time. But I think
an incredible experience. Honestly,
I think the funniest thing that happened to us was that I'm your standard East Coast, Eastern European Jew, so I'm very hirsute. I'm a hairy person, and David and I were standing on the street waiting for our ride to show up, and these little girls.
And mind you, it's really hot, so he's wearing a sleeveless shirt, so the hair on his upper arms is like visible, and he's wearing shorts, and the hair on his legs is visible. So you
were showing off the hair, man.
He's showing it off.
And who knew that the Philippines' chief export was humidity, and I was drenched in sweat, hairy, and we're standing there waiting for our ride to come, and this line of schoolgirls walked past us, and two of the girls at the very end look back at me and giggle at each other, and one of them says out loud, "David, take it."
He looks like a baboon. I about died. I turned around, Steve. I'm like, "I'm so sorry." He goes, okay. Your mom and you have wanted me to go get waxed. Let's go do it.
Oh my God. Did you get a wax after that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, how was that?
I don't know who was more traumatic for me or the little girl who had to do it. I think she has left the business altogether and went into something less stressful, like disarming old World War II ordnance.
It took her like 2 hours to wax his back.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was little Nika. That was her name. She was
I keep imagining like 40-year-old virgin whenever they wax Steve.
I was just thinking that.
That's exactly what it was like. It was crazy. My mom had a field day, like watching it happen. She was up there laughing her ass off the whole time.
You can imagine, this little girl whose chief job in waxing was using a little popsicle stick and little tiny strips on women. Here comes, Winnie the Pooh lying on his stomach, and she literally has to crawl over me to do this and do it in little tiny strips. She's
literally
little strips for little areas on women.
Putting her whole weight into trying to pull these strips off.
Yeah, I mean, she literally had to stop.
To be fair,
times.
I went and pulled one of them myself, and I only got about halfway before it like tugged to a stop, and I had to regain my grip and finish the second.
Oh my God.
And I'm, MJ, you can see I'm a big dude. It took a lot of effort to take those strips off his back.
Yeah.
It was something else.
My goodness.
To give you that, I mean, then I went back because we couldn't finish because I had to do the front as well. So it came back a few days later.
He tipped her so much.
I gave her the equivalent of a month's salary to her as a tip.
He gave her a tip, and her face, like she was like, "No, too much." He's like, "No, you take it." And I walked out the door. I was like, "You just paid her like a month's wages, right?" He's like, "I did." I'm like, "Yeah, the exchange rate, bro. Like, you gave her a ton of money, but like she worked for it."
Oh, definitely, she earned it.
Clearly, it was a workout.
And the difference culturally. I mean, I have to admit, I had it done again when I came back to the States. Because
and how was that?
It was quickly for me. So I spent...
You had a big German woman the second.
Yeah, this big German woman who was like 18 months pregnant. And she was ready to drop. And at that point, she hated all men. It seemed like that's the way she treated me. Because, I mean, the difference in how long it took was night and day. 10 minutes, I was out.
She just had to be real aggressive with those follicles, Steve.
Like Helga's House of Pain, man.
Well, to give you an idea, I mean, Nika was using a little popsicle sticks and these little 2.5-inch wide strips. Helga used a trowel of hot wax on me, and then had this sheet, and then just went rip, 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 rip. I couldn't breathe.
Oh God!
And then she literally grabbed me by the shoulder and by the hip and flipped me over, and then did my front. And I was out of there in 10 minutes.
I mean, Germany's an efficient culture.
Very much.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So this cultural conversation took a really weird turn.
Yes.
I'm gonna pull us back on track here. So, MJ.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's all about you. Yeah.
So my
Whitney's
stance on waxing.
I'm the white woman in this conversation. Can it be back about me now?
No, just information about Steve. I have strong images in my head. I have a really good imagination, y'all.
Before we do move on, I just have to know, Steven, which one would you go for again if you're going to go for one again?
For expediency, I would probably go with the American. Because the experience in the Philippines, I mean, that was a once in a lifetime experience. I mean, I experienced so many things were first for me for that entire journey from beginning to end. I mean, I never was out of the country. I never had a passport before. And this is my first experience in another country. I've never been to Mexico, and I've lived within spitting distance to the border.
Oh my God.
What? We're going to talk about that later. After all this pandemic stuff, we got to take
And
it.
at that point, I had never been to Mexico.
Oh, you have since.
Yes, I have since. Thanks to Dave. That's another
Steve all over the world, whether he wants to go or not.
Yeah. But, the first night that we were there, I had the local delicacy known as balut. If you've ever heard of that before.
You know what balut is, MJ?
No, I don't think so. What is that?
Duck embryo still in its egg.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I
he had
had
that the
that.
first night in the Philippines.
I just, Stephen, I would really love for you to do a tour of the different waxing methods of every country that you visit.
There's a series.
I'd really enjoy that.
Wax across the earth.
Waxing poetically. And writing about
MJ, aside from your pants faux pas, what have you found as have you had other things like that occur while you were in the UK, or have you found that your North Americanness is an asset to you as a performer in the UK?
I think it is. Like with anything, there are pros and cons to everything. I think it's good in that the fact that I have a natural native general American accent, it does work in my favor a lot, because when you listen to, oh God, I don't want to be offensive, but when you listen to someone, specifically when you listen to British people try to do American accents and it's not quite there yet, it just sounds like they're wearing really big dentures. Yeah.
I'm convinced that's why so many of them do a Southern drawl.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's the dirtiest version of the American accent. They can get away with
100%.
not quite being right.
Yeah. It just, so the fact that I have that is really useful. The fact that London, what I like about London specifically is that there's a really, really nice balance between screen and stage. Whereas I feel like in the States, it's a bit more like, if you want to do screen, then it makes sense to go to LA. And if you want to do stage, it makes sense to go to New York. Whereas I feel like London kind of smushes the two together a bit. Of course, that's like a gross generalization, but that's just kind of the vibe. What is oddly not as a bit of a con is that it's actually on this side, there's more resistance towards actors of color actually within lead roles and things.
Oh,
yeah, than the States. Yeah.
People don't like to talk about it, but there is a pretty decent bend of racism in the UK.
I think what people love to do is they love to just be like, oh, well, nothing's as bad as the States. And they love to just kind of make that generalization. But that's just kind of not the case. It just kind of, when you can be like, oh, it's not as bad as it is over there, then you can just not worry about it. Do you know what I mean? Oh, it's worse somewhere else. So we're not going to look at it or anything like that. But it's not actually worse. It's not actually any better, if that makes sense. Just because it's not publicized in the same way.
Just more polite.
Yeah, exactly.
I often say this to people. I'm like, where do you think the founding fathers of America came from?
Yeah.
That systemic racism that was baked into our system.
Yeah.
It came from there. So,
yeah,
but we were the rowdy Brits who were ready to get away from the king. And so we're more vocal and kind of in your face about everything, including that,
Yeah.
It came from there. That's where it started from. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it still happens just as much here every day as it does anywhere else. I lived in the States for like 4 or 5 years. I lived in France and in Australia, and here it's just as bad. Like just within the past year, like through all this like pandemic situation, I remember I ordered an Uber. The guy took one look at me, quickly locked the doors, and then drove off and refused to drive me because he thought I had COVID.
Oh man.
Yeah, like I've been, I go to order a coffee and they're like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Vancouver. It's like, oh, judging by your eyes, I'd say somewhere near Hong Kong. And I'm like, okay, haven't had my morning coffee yet. This is happening. It's such a daily, everyday thing, and it's not. And people also like to deflect and think that it only happens in like small rural towns or like things like that, but it happens just as much in metropolitan places.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lack of accountability here, in that sense. So yeah, that in terms of
the fight for accountability is painful because we're going through that here, and
yeah,
it's ugly and it's dirty and it's,
yeah,
it's not something that's going to be solved overnight and certainly not going to be made better in the near term, but it's a fight and a struggle that I think goes on and on and on. And, I don't know that there ever will be truly an end to it unless we meet aliens, and then the aliens can become the other, and then we can finally like recognize each other as being one. But,
yeah, 100%. I mean,
would they be legal aliens or illegal aliens?
Well, any alien that's not one of us is illegal, Steve.
Yeah, like that's District 9 style.
Yes,
exactly. But I mean, I've been saying that for a little while. Like, I don't think the issue of racism in humankind is going to go away until there's something other than race to make the differentiation of other.
How do you guys deal with like the microaggressions like that? Like, David, I know you've experienced that. MJ, you just talked about experiencing that while you're getting your morning coffee. I mean, do you feel like a necessity to educate people when they say stupid shit like that? Or how do you even process and feel?
It's one of those things where if I get angry at every single thing that happens, then I actually wouldn't leave my house. Like, then I might as well just fucking stay home. You know what I mean? Like, I think it is about picking your battles. And also, it's also about understanding who will actually hear it and who absolutely will not, and making that judgment. Because if I'm going to speak to someone who, no matter what I say, is really adamant in what it is that their belief system is, or this, that, and whatever, then I know that it actually serves no purpose to expend that energy trying to explain that. But I also just don't think that anger is the way to educate anyway, because I think that trying to explain to someone an experience that they have absolutely no way of experiencing, it's kind of like trying to describe purple to a blind person. Do you know what I mean? How do you do that? How do you describe that? And so I actually don't agree with the people who, I don't agree with the method of being angry and pointing the finger and like, do you know what I mean? And doing that. Because I think people are doing the best that they can. And in terms of educating people, sometimes the problem is in the way that I'm communicating the message, because everyone hears things differently. And I'm trying myself to educate myself and to learn every day new ways of explaining why this is important, and also staying open to new information, because things that I know to be true today, I might find out a week from now or 5 minutes from now that it's not true, or like there's a better way forward. So knowing that, I try as much as possible to kind of explain things in a caring way, in a loving way, and hope that the message is heard. And if people are going to be stubborn in their ignorance, then I just kind of have to let them, because it's not my responsibility how do I want to articulate this? It's not, I can only help people help themselves, and they'll only hear the messages that they want to hear.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I brought up that story about the guy I met in Waco who'd never left that 10 square mile area of his county in his whole life. 4 decades, 4.5 decades at that point. He'd never left that immediate little vicinity. I constantly bring that up with myself as a reminder when dealing with people who don't see the world the way I see it, that there's a reason people don't see the world the way I see it. Mm-hmm. That our experiences are wildly different. When I brought Steve to the Philippines, he'd never left America before.
Yeah.
And I didn't take him to Mexico or Canada, which is a kind of like baby step to seeing the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I took him clear across the planet and dropped him into an island culture. And we spent time down in the provinces and stuff. Like we got out of Manila and really went down into, the real back areas of the Philippines. And, he got to see a much larger view of the world with me. And I'm able to do that with my friends. I can't do that with every single person I come in contact with, and to Whitney's question, like I figured out during pandemic, just how much of my life I live angry about stuff that is beyond my control, because these people, I can't control how people see the world. They see the world from their lens. And all I can do is when I encounter that, to what MJ said, you got to make a determination. Is this somebody who can hear the message, or is this somebody who can't? And you got to pick and choose when you have that conversation with people. Because some people, it's just they need a little switch flipped and they kind of get what happened, and then they're more aware of it as they go forward. There's other people, there's no switch. Like it's just, or the switch is there, but it's been glued into the off position,
Yeah,
and you have to recognize that, because otherwise you're beating your head against the wall incessantly all the time.
My father told me this story when he was growing up. He grew up in Bronx, New York. Never saw it anywhere in the world. And then when he enlisted in the Air Force Reserve, he was sent to Ohio. And this was the first time that he has ever been outside, his little bubble. And he met people who were just absolute, complete opposites to him. He was the first Jew that a lot of people had met that who met him. It was like they never knew what a Jew looked like. And it's like, you can't be a Jew because you look like me.
Mm. Well, when my dad married my mom, one of his aunts asked my mom how they were going to have kids. Is it even, do you have the same parts? Because my dad was white and my mom's Filipino, and some of my dad's family members from Arkansas and whatnot had never met an Asian person in their life.
Yeah.
All they knew of them was they were the enemy in World War II. And that, that's pretty much it, Ignorance is really hard to battle against.
Yeah.
And all you can do is be patient and kind. And I think that's the key thing, is to be kind about it. And I think it's real easy because so many people of color have had to explain things and fight for things for so long. It's easy to have a gut reaction that's really negative when you encounter ignorance.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we've got to remember that is the first time that somebody's actually been exposed to something, or it's the first time you could present that argument to them in a kind way, because it's so easy to instantly move to the negative,
Totally.
And it's hard to stay on that positive bent, because it gets exhausting.
Have you ever had to deal with that, Steve? Like anti-Semitic rhetoric in your direction?
Oh, definitely. Oh,
yeah.
Since I was 5, it's one of the reasons why I don't like bringing it up, but I'll just say it for the sense of the conversation, is one of the reasons why I'm an atheist. I was told at a very young age that I killed Christ and that I was going to burn in hell. And I thought, who would do that to a person? Because we were the first Jews on the block, and we've had a cross burning on our lawn. We've had my brother. I have an older brother who was constantly being tormented. I never knew what true meaning of being a Jew. I've always celebrated Christmas growing up because my father grew up in a very strict Jewish household, and my mother was what we would consider a Reformed Jew. So I never had anything kosher in my life. I never, I think I've gone to temple. I can count on one hand how many times I've been to temple. I've been to more bar mitzvahs, but never got into the culture because it's a constantly in my face. I mean, I had to, as you said, stop being angry about it all the time and just roll with it. I make more jokes about it than my friends did. Dave's dad would get so upset when I would make these jokes, self-deprecating jokes about being Jewish, and then David would start in and doing it, and he would get upset about it. I was really, that was a really eye-opening experience that somebody who was not Jewish being offended.
My dad, to his credit, spent most of his life learning about as many religions and spiritual tendencies as he could, and developed his own philosophy of what life is and whatnot. And a big part of his philosophy in life was respecting other people's viewpoints and other people's beliefs as truth. It's their truth, and if it's true to them, then it's his truth too. And he always had a hard time with anybody bagging on religion, even if it's within their own context of bagging on their own religion or their own background. And then, he had his blind spots too, though, like he had 3 mixed race kids, did really well by us overall, and, moved us to California and away from Ohio and Indiana, when I was in the 3rd grade, because he knew that growing up there would be very difficult for us being mixed race. He wanted to get us into neighborhoods and stuff where we would see people, that looked like us and we could relate to more, and that we wouldn't be the only Asian kid in school or, person of color in school. So, he wanted to make sure we ended up in places where we would more easily fit in, and find people we could relate to. But, in the end, I was his kid and he was white. And at a certain point, he stopped seeing the color in me, especially after my parents got divorced and my mom wasn't around every day and we were living with my dad. Like, we were just his kids, And as I grew up, I didn't get the talk about being careful around the cops. I didn't get the person of color child speech, and when I ran off into the world and moved to Texas, of all places, I had a wild, eye-opening experience, because he had sheltered it from us when we were in Indiana with family. He'd had conversations with my grandparents when we were really young about no racial jokes when my kids are around. All these things that you consider normal are going to be really hurtful to my kids. So none of the family can behave like that when we're around. So we didn't see that growing up around that family. And so I just didn't see it. And then, he had moved us to these areas where we could grow up with other kids who were mixed race, and so that was fine. And I just didn't see my color at all till I moved to Texas. And then it was like floodgates of racism just opened. And it was a wild ride, the 3 years I spent in Texas. Having my car searched on the side of the interstate in the middle of the night a half dozen times, where I had to pull everything out of the car out, dogs sniff through everything, like just looking for any reason to do something bad. Thankfully, I was pretty well behaved, so I didn't get into too much trouble. But if I'd have opened my mouth, like I have no doubt I would have gotten into even more trouble than I, had to go through. But that was difficult. And then coming back home, kind of bitter about it when I moved back to California and moved back into my dad's house to help him take care of my sisters who were having troubles. And, he and I had a couple of years where like I had to kind of readjust his view of who I was and remind him that, like, hey, when I hug you in public, Dad, I got to say, I love you, Dad, out loud. Cause people don't assume I'm your kid, and it creates all sorts of weird looks, So, and I know that even when I said, I love you, Dad, some people thought I was adopted, because he was wildly white. And at the time I was really dark because I spent a lot of time in the sun when I was young. So, it's, it's weird. My dad was really, really respectful about a lot of things, but he did become colorblind at the end, and not at the end, but for a long period of time there in the middle of my life, and wasn't a good ally for me because of that blindness. And I've seen that in a couple of my other white friends who are dads of mixed race kids who are like, oh, I'm colorblind. I don't see color. I'm married to a Korean. I'm married to a Thai woman. My kids are mixed race. And I'm like, that's great. But like, if you don't see color, you're not seeing what they're going through either. And you're not paying attention. And colorblind is a wonderful ideal, but it's not practical in raising a kid of color in this world. You have to see it and you have to remember it. Otherwise, you're not equipping them for the world they're about to step into. So,
does Canada have a lot of these same issues? I know you mentioned that the UK does, and obviously America does, but did you experience that growing up like David did?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember I was on a bus between Vancouver and Calgary, and I just remember this man. Actually, a lot of racism, a lot of overt racism that I experienced wasn't even from Caucasian people. It was from other people of color, which is a whole other can of worms. But I just
don't get me started on Mexicans and how they look at me.
God. It was actually a man. He was a Native American man who approached me and my best friend, who's Filipino, on the bus and basically got up in our face and was like, you fucking Japs, show some fucking respect. We're going to bomb your ass. And because he's very small man and I'm not a large woman. I was actually quite frightened. Because that bus is like 14 hours and he was like, really, he kept getting closer and closer. And I was like, oh my God, and there were like not many people on the bus. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to the front of the bus and talk to the driver. And he just was like, show some fucking respect or else I'll fucking bomb your ass and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I just remember being like, oh my God, do I pretend to be asleep? Do I engage? Do I not engage? I don't know. And I was like 22 at the time. It was like, like lots of stuff like that. Up until I was in like my mid 20s, I thought that the only compliment I could get about my appearance was, "Oh, you're really pretty for an Asian." That's always a fun one. As if it's like a handicap or something. Just like all kinds of stuff. Like I got refused service because I wasn't Black. I remember I dated a Black guy for a bit and like the Black women in that community, like used to call me names and they fucking hated me. Yeah, just like it's yeah, really. It's a lifelong thing. It's a nice lifelong journey. But yeah, I think that's also why I feel so passionately about doing what I want to do, because I think the language that the way to communicate a message sometimes isn't even through directly saying anything, but in just creating the work and making people see on TV, on their TVs and in movies and even on stage or whatever, that, people of different colors and genders and from different walks are all just people. And the more that that's seen, then what I'm hoping for is the less that will happen, all of these microaggressions and things, and the more people can be educated. Because as much as I can go one-to-one, like be responsive in these situations, it's kind of like in trying to educate as I go along, which I do try to do when it feels right and feels necessary and it feels productive. But it's kind of like handing a water bottle to people, to villagers, right? Whereas to me, making work, making films, making media, where it is represented in a progressive way, that's building the well. Why would I hand out a bajillion water bottles when I can build a well? That to me is affecting change.
It's leading by example too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's which leading by example, I think, is the most effective way of educating people. Personally.
So MJ, in an ideal future scenario, with obviously you have a personal mission statement for your art and creativity. Is there a project that you could think of in your mind where you're like, if money were no option, if the cast, crew, everybody, is there a project that you feel like this would typify?
This is Whitney's big closing question. What
I want to do, and like what's your dream project, basically?
Okay. I know it's cheating to have a couple, but yes, I'm going to cheat and fine. So one of my, so The Dark Knight is one of my favorite films of all time. And to be a woman and a person of color in a role like that, is with a director like Christopher Nolan and playing with actors as brilliant as Heath Ledger. Like, I don't know what that looks like, but like something like that, except I'm there. except I'm Christian Bale, apparently. So there's that side of it. And then for me, also comedy, I like to work with someone like Taika Waititi would be an absolute dream.
He's brilliant.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. Like I think one actor who kind of comes to mind, who I love and really actually influenced me greatly was Jackie Chan. And it's because he took what was seen as a stoic people like Asians, and he created comedy with it, but also was the lead in it, and it was a household name from that. So yeah, I think just from a personal perspective, showing that what is stereotypically a tight-lipped, emotionless culture, showing that like, hey, you know what? We can be funny too. Having that moment, I don't know what that really looks like. I mean, doing a film that's as brilliant as like, I don't know, like Jojo Rabbit. Oh my God, what a brilliant film. And what that did, taking such dark subject matter and creating such an incredibly witty and beautifully told story in a hilarious way. Something that feels like that, except I'm there. So those are two for me, I think.
That's great. And I think in both cases, like you said, I mean, being in any sort of superhero movie like that gives you the platform for other young ladies of color to see you and be like, hey, I can be a superhero too. Because you said that you know, in your case, it's Batman for you, but to have like an Asian Batwoman, like how that would be awesome.
Yeah. I think I also just have such a soft spot in my heart for that film, that just like the way the cinematography was, the way like Christian Bale played off of Heath Ledger and that dynamic was just like, I'm just like literally foaming at the mouth just thinking about that. But yeah, like that kind of thing. This is also why I like really respect people like Charlize Theron. Like when she did Atomic Blonde, she created that. She wanted that character to be, if you replaced a man into that same role, there's absolutely nothing that needed to change. And so, yeah, just like that kind of ideal, I think.
Even when she played Monster, played Eileen Wuornos. I mean, she literally morphed into that character and disappeared within that character.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh,
people to aspire to. It's nice. It's nice to have role models. People are willing to say, hey, I know you think I'm this, but I'm going to show you I can also do this.
Yeah. And I think it is important to acknowledge that even though there's still so far to go, it is important to acknowledge that there are people who are pushing forward, and to celebrate that and to appreciate that from all sides. And I'm just really, really grateful that there are people in my life, and I continue to meet people who are trying to push that forward. So I feel really, really fortunate in that way.
Well, and MJ, kudos to you. You're one of those people. You're clearly pushing it forward and being a role model. So, yeah.
Thank you. Fine.
I was really happy when Marvel did the Doctor Strange movie and Benedict Wong showed up. I was like, there's a dude I recognize. Like, yeah, we're shaped the same. We look,
Yeah.
And now they've got Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings coming out later this year. And, it's exciting. It's exciting to see, Asians on screen. Like, it's making me happy to see that. And like, hey,
totally.
Totally. My nephews have people to look up to, representation on screen. It's amazing.
The first male Asian actor to be nominated for an Academy Award.
Steven Yeun.
Yep.
Loved him in Walking Dead. Yeah. Glad to see that he's alive again.
And doing well.
Yeah.
Well, MJ, thank you so much for joining us today and talking. I mean, this is a lot longer podcast than we normally do, but it's a heady topic, and we got to reminisce on Steve's waxing experience, which
I mean, if there's one takeaway, it's that there needs to be a Wax Around the World show. Like that's my takeaway from this entire conversation, really.
Yeah, I think we need to pair you and Steve up and just follow the two of you around the world. You can take him everywhere and watch you react.
Trying to raise funds for it. A Go Wax Me campaign.
Oh my God! Seriously, message me. You think I'm joking? I will do it. Don't test me. I will do it.
I mean, it has all the makings of a hit, man.
Exactly.
Be hilarious.
All right, guys. Well, we need to get going. I got things to do. I'm heading out of town, but really great talking to you, MJ. And
thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
Stay in touch with us if you ever have anything down the line that you want to announce and spread the word about. Like, we'd be happy to have you come back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. Have a really, really wonderful day, and happy Oscars Day, guys.
Happy Oscars.
Right.
Hello there, citizens. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the floaty that will not flush no matter how many times you try in the toilet bowl of crime. I am Darkwing Duck, telling you please, talk hard and enjoy the mindgasm. Whatever the heck that means. After all, you are watching Intellectual Podcast with your ears.